Hi class, welcome to lesson 7, multiplying digits. So our objective here is I can fluently multiply multiple digit decimals by aligning numbers and moving the decimal. And again, we're focusing on fluently because remember, it's something that you should be able to fluently. If you can do it fluently, it's something that you can do over and over again correctly. Then multi-digit again, so not just like 1.1, it's like something that would be 1.456. You will be doing this by aligning the numbers, whereas for addition and subtraction, you align the decimals. Now you're aligning the actual numbers. So that is the difference. And you're going to be moving the decimal point. No vocab and no reminders. So let's move on jump right in and to unlock the problem. So we have 9.70 times 38.5. So I'm gonna just write this over each other. Well, on top of each other. How's the best way to say this? I'm going to write these with one on top of the other. There we go. And see, I'm lining up the digits. Here are my decimals. They happen to be lined up. Now I'm going to move my decimal over 1, 2 times, 1, 2 times. Now I need to multiply this. So I'm just going to go through and do this multiplication. And I'm given, and after I add everything together, I have, what is this? 373,450. That's not my final answer. I need to count. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and I move the decimal, so now I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So my final, Ooh, I made a silly mistake. Ooh, right on the first example, come on. Let's see. I'm supposed to be multiplying 9.70 and 38.5. I multiplied 9.70 and 3.85. Silly mistake. This is why you work carefully and slowly and you watch what you do, right? My decimal is here. So now I'm counting 1, 2, 3 times. 1, 2, 3. That makes more sense than if I had $37. That wouldn't make sense. That's why it's important to look at it if what you're doing makes sense, guys, because if I ignore my decimals, and when I moved my decimal over, when I did it previously when it was wrong, I had 37.3. But if I ignored my decimals and I looked at just 38, and 9 and I'm multiplying these, 38 times 9 is definitely not going to be 37. So that's why it's so important to think clearly about your answers. Don't just mindlessly do the work. So after I move it back 1, 2, 3 times, multiplying those makes more sense because you have to get a bigger number, right? And I get 373.450. Question is, do I need the 0? No, I don't. I can just say 373.45. All right. Steps. Step 1 is to align each digit ignoring the decimal. So I am going to write my example. I'm going to use the same numbers. And I'm aligning the digits. So I have a 9. I'm going to include the digit, or I'm ignoring the decimal, sorry. I'm going to make sure to include the decimal in when I write it out. So I have to include it, but I'm not going to line up the decimal like I did on the last. I'm not going to line up the decimal like I did on the last lesson. All right, so I've lined up my digits. So these are all lined up. Step 2 is to move the decimal of each value to the right until it is behind the final digit. So for example, I need to move my decimal. So here's my decimal for the first value. And here I move it 1, 2 times. And I stop here because it's behind the final digit. So my final digit is this 0. So instead of just moving it over once to 7, I move it all the way to the end of to the last digit. And the same thing here, I move it over once because I only have one digit till it's behind the final digit. Step 3 is just to multiply. So now that you have the decimal is removed, so I've moved my decimal over and I'm just multiplying now 970 times 385. After I do my multiplication, I'm left with a very large number. I have 373,450. So I have that number. Now I need to move on to step 4. All right, so let's go back to step 1. So when we were up here, now let's go back to step 2. So we moved the decimal over and we jumped over here 2 times and then here 1 more time. So when we did that, then when we went to multiply, I said, now we're just working with these numbers. We're working with, instead of 9.70, you're working with 970, and instead of 38.5, it's 385. And this is what we got when we multiplied. But now, we're not done. This isn't our final answer. We need to include those decimals that we took out. So we need to include them. We took them out, so we took them out here. 1, 2, 3. Now we need to put them back in. See, they're out, and now we need to put them back. So let's look on step 4. So step 4 is to count the amount of jumps you did in total to move the decimals back to the problem. So in total is important because we're looking at the total number of jumps we did. So let's look at the multiplication answer we got in step 3. We got 373,450. If we write down how we already took it out, took our decimal out, we jumped 1, 2, 3. So we moved a total of 3 times. So now to put our decimal back, we have to do it 1, 2, 3. And that's your final answer then. So then it would be 373.450. And you can include or exclude that 0 in your final answer, because technically, remember, all numbers have a decimal after it, and 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 for on and on and on. So technically we don't have to include it. All right, examples. All right, example 1 is 0.0084 times 0.096. So step 1 is to align my, Step 1 is to set up my problem by aligning the digits. So let me do that. I like to start backwards when I'm writing that second number. So I wrote my first one number and I know it's going to end on 4. So since I want these all to line up, I'm going to write the number backwards. All right, because if I lined it up with my this 0 here, then all my numbers would be off. So I like to write it. Remember, everything should be lined up when you're multiplying. Everything should be lined up here in the 1th place. Okay, now I need to move my decimal over. So I'm going to do that. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. I'm actually going to rewrite this now. So I have 0. I have 3 zeros up there. And then 84. And then 2 zeros on the second one. And then 96. This wasn't in the steps for the last one. But I'm going to take out my zeros. So they're just going to be adding wasted space. Because everything after I multiply 84 and 96 here, every other thing being multiplied will just be a 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So they're not going to be adding anything. So I'm actually just going to take these out and just multiply 84 times 96. Now I'm just going to go through and multiply 84 by 96. All right, now I need to add these together. Now that we have our answer, we need to add our decimals back in. So we need to go back up where we removed the decimals and count how many times. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 in total, but if we count individually, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 on the top, and 1, 2, 3 on the bottom, for a total of 7. So we have our decimal behind each of those numbers when we multiplied. So all we have to do now is bring it back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now we have our final decimal. And now we need to add those zeros that we took out we have to add those back in because all that missing space from 8 is a 0. So we have to include those. So it's 1, 2, 3 that we have to include that we took out from here. So let's include those zeros back in, and they need to be in between those jumps. So there's 1 0 in between the jump, another 0, and another 0. Those are in between. See how they're in between each jump that I made? So therefore my final answer is 0.00. Therefore my final answer is 0.0008064. Whew. A lot of zeros in that one. All right, let's do another one. All right, last example. So we have 32.5 and 7.4. So I'm going to write 7.4 and I'm lining up the place values, not the decimals. And it just happens to be that the decimals line up here, but remember you're lining up the place values, not the decimals. So let's solve. One, two.
So now you can rewrite this if you'd like as 325 times 74 if you'd like.
All right, after I do my multiplication, I need to bring my decimals back in. So I moved it 1, 2 times. So now I need to bring it back. So it's over here. My decimal was secretly hiding here the entire time. And I just need to move it back 1, 2 times. So my final answer is 240. And do I have to write this 0? No, I don't, because technically, remember, there's a million zeros after, right? So I could just write 240 and 5/10. So my answer is 240 and 5/10, or 240.5. And that's it for this lesson. You should log into Think Central and do your quiz and your homework. Bye, guys.